So thank you, first of all, for to G9+ for having invited all of us to present the second roundtable on the European champions. So we have already a lot of information and feedback, and it's now time to have some of our European scale-ups, startups, giving us their feedback on the challenges of scaling a company in Europe. And so I'm very happy to present all of you. Thank you very much for coming. Two of our speakers came especially from Germany tonight to be here, so thank you very much. I will present all of them one after the other so that you know who is speaking, because it's a little bit maybe less known than BP and Roland Berger. Let's see. So I will start with Emmanuele. Thank you very much for being here tonight. After an early career in investment banking and management consulting, you're currently general partner at 360 Capital Partners, a venture firm based in Paris and Milan that invests in innovative early-stage companies in Europe. Besides being a board member in some of France's most known startups like Teddy Bear, Bergamote, Le Slip Français, Leetchi, Food Cherry, and Kitok, you are also one of the co-founders and active board member of France Digitale, the leading French startup association. Together with the team of France Digitale, you're currently working on a series of proposals for the EU that seek to help French startups scale faster in Europe. For this, you have questioned dozens of French startup CEOs in the last weeks on their pain points and challenges. So my first question would be to you. Could you give us a short overview of this study and of the findings that you already have, and the pain points you have identified with the startups?
Thanks, Andrea, for the introduction, and hi to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. So yes, I represent France Digitale tonight, which is an association which was created back in 2012 and which put together VC funds and startups. So we decided back in 2012 that the best way to talk to the political world was to actually put in the same room an entrepreneur and investor to present the challenges we had and to discuss about how we can find the best digital policy for the French ecosystem. I think that if we look at the ecosystem today, the results are quite good. Going back to what we're doing this year with regard to France Digitale, as you all know, we are heading to European election in a few months. And so every time, I mean, as we did back in 2017 for the French elections, we are going to present a manifesto to in Brussels in a few weeks' time, and we will try to challenge the candidates to European election to understand a bit what's their view about the digital economy. Digital economy today is not like back in the 20s, in the year 2000, where we thought about it like the new economy as part of the economy. This is central for the future of the European economy, and so any politician, irrespectively from his position, should have some thoughts regarding how you should pilot the digital economy in Europe. And so what we've done, I mean, we have, of course, we have more than 1,000 members, but luckily we also start having a certain number of scale-ups, which are members at France Digitale. So we have interviewed them in order to understand what are the pain points, and what we just saw earlier on is corresponding to what we found out with our members. So obviously, there's a real need in Europe to have more, say, simpler rules, more homogeneous rules, in order to have, say, European companies scaling up in other European countries. Today, for a French company, the option of opening like 3 countries, Spain, Italy, and Germany, or going the US, is probably even more complicated to do the 3 countries first. So we have to realize that today there's no competitive advantage for a French or a Dutch company, German company, to go European. There's zero benefit. So not only each European country has a different story, a different market, different habits, but on top of that, tax-wise, it's very complicated. Labor law-wise, same thing. Regulatory-wise, same thing. If you take, for example, sharing economy, new business models, you have companies that are allowed to operate in France that cannot operate in other European countries. And so there's a real need to, the pains are, I think, fairly well identified. It's a matter of what we want to propose and how to execute it.
Thank you very much. So I don't know if you already have the possibility to share some of the proposals that you want to present, and maybe if you have, it's always also a question of time for every startup. They want to act quickly, they want to grow quickly. So do you have any idea of the time scale that you are looking at for putting in place some of those measures?
I mean, I cannot provide detailed measure because we're still talking about this with the France Digitale team, but I can tell you what we would like to do is to make sense out of the European company status. Today, there is a European company status which is not used, which is completely empty. So the idea would be to actually give some substance to this status, and maybe to do this by convincing 2 or 3 countries in Europe to actually sign, let's say, a bilateral agreement to execute, like Germany and France could agree upon a certain number of 2-3 measures that will make easier for French companies to do in Germany and vice versa. But it is as simple as that. I think in Europe you have to prove that you're capable of doing something actionable quickly at local level, and then probably the rest of the other European countries will join, because it makes more sense to be in that sort of, say, philosophy.
Thank you. And concerning the proposals that we had tonight, and that you have heard, that we've already discussed in the first roundtable, what would be the ones that are, for you, the most important, or the ones that we have to tackle quickly?
I mean, I think there are 2 things. One, I voted for the simplification, and I think simplification is a good start to develop and to scale up. I would also mention one of the ideas that came up from this exercise, which to me was very interesting. We heard that we need to protect European companies from international competition. And I think this is a real point to which we don't have real answers today. So, in my opinion, one of the subjects we've been discussing about, but this is more, let's say, on a brainstorming basis, there's nothing which we are preparing, is today, if you look at the European scale-ups, one of the biggest issues is that European scale-ups have very few buyers in Europe. We don't have any GAFAM in Europe that is capable of buying and bring some stability to the shareholder structure of a European scale-up. And our public markets are pretty weak. So we see very few IPOs, very little money is raised in IPOs in Europe. And so there's a real issue here. I mean, we are injecting more and more money into the system, which is a good thing, but no one is thinking of exits. And exits is a way to give continuity to a scale-up. So I think that Europe should, or few European countries should seriously consider to set up maybe a sort of sovereign fund to cover the step, say the next step. So once a scale-up has sufficient critical mass, how do we stabilize the shareholder structure of such a company?
Okay, thank you very much, Emmanuele. We can come back to this maybe later. I would like to introduce the second speaker of this roundtable, Alix. So, Alix, thank you very much for being here. And foremost, because today, if I may mention, it's your first day back to work from your maternity leave. So thank you very much for being here, even though you told me that you didn't really leave. Of course, as the CEO of a scale-up, you cannot really leave your team alone. So, Alix, so you have, you're the CEO of Leetchi.com. You have joined Leetchi in February 2007 as a Chief Operating Officer. In April 2018, you were appointed CEO and you took over the management of the platform founded by Céline Lazorte in 2009, so 10 years now. You are currently leading the development of the business in France and abroad alongside the management team and all of the Leetchi employees. Before joining Leetchi, you headed eCitizen, a marketplace of ecological and healthy products that you co-founded in 2009. So for those who don't know, Leetchi is a service that helps to collect money online with your friends or your relatives or any other person, and for any occasion, might it be a birthday or a group gift, a common cause or any common expense. Leetchi is available in 4 languages, in French, English, Spanish, and in German. And you count more than 12 million users from more than 150 countries. In 2018, Leetchi has raised more than 200 million euros on its platform. 50 million euros are used for solidarity projects. You have also established partnerships with more than 100 e-commerce partners on your platform. So first of all, thank you again for being here. And my first question for you would be, only 2 years after launching the platform in 2009, Leetchi was already available in 3 languages and in more than 150 countries. And you have launched the Spanish office in 2013 and the UK office in 2016. So what have been the most important hurdles for Leetchi while scaling in Europe?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. So yes, indeed, international expansion or European expansion for Leetchi was quite fast. I'd say the 2 main difficulties that we met were first the positioning of our product on the different markets, and the second was adapting our marketing approach. On the first topic, regarding our product positioning, as for many other companies, I believe, the main difficulty for us was understanding the local needs, understanding what the local markets were waiting. And if I go back historically on our different markets, so the first one was the Spanish market, where we were quite lucky, I'd say, because there was very quickly a good product market fit. And we realized that the Spanish consumers had a behavior quite similar to the French ones regarding online payments, and they were really ready to adopt this new way of pooling money online for group gifts. But then it was a completely different matter on the German market for 2 main reasons, I'd say. First is the online payment behavior of German consumers, and second is their approach to group gifting. So just if I give you a few illustrations regarding online payment, German consumers are still very conservative and they are very reluctant to give personal data. So they prefer using solutions where they don't have to provide their banking information each time, for example. And well, the German market is, out of all the countries we operate in, it's the one in which we have the highest rate of delete account requests. Once again, because Germans are very sensitive with their personal data. So that's one obstacle. And as I was saying, there's one other obstacle that we met was that Germans don't have the same attitude to group gifting, and they prefer doing individual gifts. And this is why we completely shifted on the German market and decided to address what we call solidarity pools. So being the leading platform for fundraising around projects and causes. And then to finish with the UK market, which is the most recent, well, we were quite surprised to see that on the UK market, we had similar behaviors to the French rather than the German. So we were quite astonished with that. What we decided at first was that given that the UK market is already huge, there are many companies and it's really massive on fundraising for charities. We felt that we didn't have sufficient funding and the sufficient know-how to go on that specific market. So we decided to really focus on group gifting. And so we have really different products, I'd say, on these different markets. And then the second topic, very quickly, is the marketing approach. We realized that one size doesn't fit all, and we really had to rely on the know-how of local agencies to adapt our marketing campaigns in order to raise brand awareness and have good conversions. For example, we have TV campaigns that we have not adapted. We've done them completely differently in Germany and in the UK, once again relying on local agencies to address the correct message. So those were the main difficulties that we encountered on expanding. And all of this requires knowing the right people in these different countries and having the right funding, because of course it's not just, if I take the campaign, the TV campaign example, having one spot that we can then just translate. It's redoing the whole thing from scratch, which is of course time consuming and very expensive.
Thank you very much, Alix. So for you and for Leetchi, I think especially is also a service that did not exist before as such. So you really created a market, and you had to create a market in every country, not knowing exactly how the reaction would be from the different populations finally. So, and in every country your service is running a little bit differently, I would say. And the value proposition is a little bit, has to be adapted to the different markets. So from your point of view, also from a B2C, with a B2C approach company, what would you like to see to change in Europe, or what would be, if you had a magic wand, the changes that you would like to see for Leetchi and maybe companies that are close to what you do, to be able to scale up faster? I mean, you already had a very good track record in the little time that you're on the market, but is there anything that you would wish for to be able to scale faster and grow faster?
Well, I think definitely harmonizing is one main topic. I'd say I have in mind 3 difficulties, obstacles that we probably all face. One is talent acquisition. There is little mobility on the European market, and I find it very hard finding talents in the local markets. And that partly because of employment regulations that are different, and the stance of the European community regarding non-EU residents. And so that's one thing. Secondly, we're on a fragmented market, and I believe there's often a choice to be made either between going straight to the US, a very much bigger market, but I feel that American and European consumers and investors don't know each other so well, and so it's really difficult to have a common transatlantic view on things. And so the other choice is going on European markets, but even though we might understand each other better, we often don't speak the same language. And as I was saying, there are very different approaches, even though we are close to one another. And so this fragmentation leads to the third point, that it is very costly, and there is a higher need in capital to expand for a European market. So I think there is a little advantage for European companies that are on a rather large home market, but nevertheless, there are a lot more funds needed to expand into different countries rather than being a leader on one's home market. So given that, I'd say that if I had this magic wand, maybe just things that are already we're already working on, the European Commission is already working on, is having this single market and really strengthening and expanding the digital single market and making sure that regulations is eased specifically regarding employment and having funds that help us address this difficulty that is it is much more capital consuming to go on many different markets. So I'd say these are the main objectives that would really help Leetchi.
And it's also often a question of time. I mean, going very quickly is something that also requires a lot of local knowledge, maybe more access, quicker access also to local know-how with local partners, and also, of course, the funding needed to go this quickly and to have the possibility to impose a new business model also on the market. Thank you very much, Alix, for now. Maybe we come to this later.
I maybe just adding on what you just
Sure.
said, I do feel that, not minimizing the fact that funds are needed, I think it's more a matter of understanding before financing. It is really a matter of strengthening the know-how, innovative ecosystem for Europe by solving the know-who problem, getting to just know individuals, professionals in different countries working on the same problems that we address every day would be of great utility. And I feel that it would be great to have specialized hubs with professionals exchanging, collaborating, talking to each other when we're not direct competitors. And I think one illustration we talked about together was it would be of great use for our acquisition manager, for example, to be able to speak to acquisition managers in German companies, English companies, Spanish companies, and understand how they manage on their market and just exchanging the way we work on our respective markets. So I think it is a lot about liberating this intangible information that resides in people. And so there is something really interesting, I believe, in building these hubs and making sure that we can talk to each other.
So bringing the ecosystem a little bit more closer together, that is already building. I mean, we are only building this since a couple of years. I mean, we have to be clear about this. It's like maybe 10, 15, 20 years that we are building this. So I think we've already come a long way, but there's still a lot of things to do to bring people together, to understand each other between the different cultures, and to create this exchange. Yeah. Andreas, so thank you for being here and having made the trip from Munich to Paris. So you're the CEO of ProGlove, and a provider of industrial wearables based out of Munich. So Industry 4.0, industry of the future, as we say. That is now launching its activities on the French market. Before joining ProGlove, that you joined in December of last year, you were the CEO of the Swabian unicorn TeamViewer, that you have developed to one of the market leaders with over 1.5 billion installations and 400 million users. Prior to this, you spent some time at Swisscom and were Senior Vice President and General Manager EMEA at NetApp, a provider for hybrid cloud data services that you expanded successfully in the European market. You're currently part of the Economic Council, a German business association representing the interests of more than 11,000 small and medium-sized firms, as well as larger multinational companies. You also participate in a national working group for startups in Germany that consults the German government on digital questions. So my question would be my first question for you would be if you could give us maybe your feedback and an overview of the state of the discussion in Germany on scaling in Europe, the needs and challenges that German startups face. Is it the same? Are they maybe a little bit different? And so maybe you can talk a little bit about how German companies see that and what is your vision?
I'll try my best. Good evening. So actually I think the German market is not so much different from any other market. But as you pointed out, Europe has its special flavors. Everyone thinks that in a great economy, a lot of startups are happening. As a matter of fact, in the last 15 years, so if you compare 2002 to today, 2002, about every third person out of 100 who's going to work said, I'm going to start a startup. Today, it's only one. And there's probably a simple reason for that. It's the competitive market on getting manpower in the world is getting so hard that people, and that's also probably a little bit German, they tend to say, oh, I want to have a good job. I go to a Bosch, Siemens, big company. I don't take the risk of starting a company. So in an environment like this, it's actually difficult. On the other side, we also saw a quite big uptick in startups in Germany. Berlin, as you know, being the major hub in Germany, but actually next to Berlin, it's already Munich, which I'm very happy. I'm a total fan of things that should happen in Europe, and it's the things that are very close to industrial work. That's why I joined ProGlove. It has to do with Industry 4.0, it has to do with industrial IoT, and I truly believe that's something that Europe needs to own. But to the point of the other speakers already, I think we are not doing enough as a European community to really foster that. Just a live example of what's happening with ProGlove. So we always try to find good sources to really grow our business also outside. And yes, it's much more difficult to grow within Europe than just going abroad and starting something in the States. So we try to get some funding from public sources, and there are a lot of public sources, but then there's a big one like European Investment Bank, and then you're too small for them. You go to the next one, then you're too big for them. You go to the other one, and then suddenly you're not doing enough software, and for the other one you're doing too much software. So I think everyone tries to make it as complicated as possible. They have money, but they try to make it as complicated as possible to give the money to you. And that's something which is quite astonishing. And it's a little bit contradictory because you believe, everyone talks about these big funds, these big pools that are generated, but as a matter of fact, for the smaller, but also the mid-sized companies, it's quite difficult to get to money in Europe. So also another example, if you start in US, if you have a great idea, you don't even need money, you don't even need the product yet. Sometimes you just need the vision, and you need to have a good business plan, you get money. In Europe, if you have a business plan, you have money, you have big customers, it's still difficult. So I think getting this change in mindset on how you treat a startup and how you actually help people taking risks, because everyone who funds a company, a startup, is taking risk, and helping them taking that risk is something that I think would be very good for us as Europeans.
Thank you, Andrea. So a lot of people are have the same opinion as you. And so from your own experience maybe with Teamure and also ProGlove, the biggest difficulties, of course, is access to funding, as you have just explained. From a business point of view, maybe, what would be things that you would like to see changing? And maybe to add my second question to this, from yeah, we cannot really talk about this. So what would be for you concrete changes and projects? And as you don't understand French, you couldn't hear, unfortunately, the projects that we have pitched tonight, except mine. So this is why I've made it in English. So what would be maybe a concrete project that you would like to see, like starting tomorrow, and that would really help you as ProGlove already better enter the French market and maybe also other markets. So you have maybe potential customers here, so don't hesitate.
So now you know who's the guy who couldn't understand French. Sorry for that. For me, I mean, you said it really rightly, it's so much easier to get outside of Europe and start something because you immediately know you've got a big market, and that's why also we choose to start a business in the States. I would love if we found a platform where Europeans, it's made easy for European startups to start something else in other countries, whether being supported by different laws, so that you get a different administrative support, whether it's a pan-European community or political will that says, for European companies, we try to find something to simplify your life. I think that's something that I would wish, because if I go to France, actually France was quite good. I actually got more support than I got in other countries. But if you go to other countries, it's so difficult to get to know the people there, to understand who should I go to. No one knows your brand, even though you might be the best brand in Germany. Really having a platform where you can play this at a similar level like in your home country would be good. Because otherwise it's a little bit like it always happens on a political side, where everyone says, oh, we are Europe, but at the end we are Germans, or we are French, or we are British. And I think thinking more European and giving us a different platform to talk about new products, new companies, would be something wonderful to have.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we can have some questions later on this. I would now like to present my next guest, Claudia Helming from Germany. Thank you very much for having made the trip to see us tonight. So you're managing director of DaWanda. I will explain to you what DaWanda is. So you have founded DaWanda in 2006 in Berlin, and you serve today still as its CEO and managing director. Together with your teams and the DaWanda community, you have turned do-it-yourself into a socially acceptable phenomenon and established handmade products as a new category in e-commerce in Europe. DaWanda was an online platform where people could sell and buy handmade products of all kinds in categories like jewelry, clothing, paper goods, or toys. DaWanda counted up to 8 million members in Germany and Europe. More than 300,000 persons earned money in selling their products on your platform. And you estimate that more than 50,000 people earned their living completely or partly by selling products on DaWanda. You internationalized your service very quickly in Europe, also in France in 2012, where you faced local competition of My Little Market that has been taken over by the American player Etsy in 2014. In 2017, DaWanda made more than 16 million euros in turnover in commissions only, with a team of 150 employees. In the beginning of 2018, you announced profitability for the first time, but had to shut down your activities mid-2018 and transfer all of your activities to Etsy, the American player. Many people say that DaWanda had great chances to be a profitable company, but your VCs seem to have other priorities. So could you give us maybe some background on what led to the closing of DaWanda and how it could have been avoided in your eyes? What were the greatest challenges for you while developing DaWanda in Europe?
Yeah, thanks, Andrea, and thanks for having me. Good night, everybody. When I listen to the story you're telling, I have to admit, sounds crazy. And probably the last 12 years have been crazy. So yes, indeed, we closed down the company in summer last year after having reached profitability and being actually pretty successful. Reason for that was simply that we were, well, in a way, selling the company to our American competitors who did not really want to take over, well, let's say everything, but just rather, well, what they really needed, which were the customers, the sellers, the inventory, etc., but not necessarily the company, employees, etc., etc. And yeah, so this was the reason. And yeah, you mentioned earlier on that after having founded DaWanda in 2006, which was, well, compared to today, a really different age for internet companies, we actually started to internationalize the company pretty late, in my opinion, which was only like 6 years later. And well, we started to do business in France, in Italy, in Spain. And you mentioned the French competitor that was already doing business in France. Of course, we tried to collaborate with them or to actually maybe even discussed ideas around merging the companies. And I think something like that would have probably been the solution. So finding other companies with whom to take, well, mergers, partnerships, etc. across Europe to really compete with the big American player.
So we know that from the experience it's not always easy if you take two very established startups like you were in Germany and a real love brand in Germany that was really very much appreciated by the community. And the same also for My Little Market in France. So maybe looking at it now, it would have been a great opportunity to get those two companies together. But as we know also, it's very complicated to bring two entrepreneurs, two companies together. So maybe there is something that we could do, or maybe people can learn from your experience to better create a European champion together than to let the American champion come to the European market. So what do you think from your experience now from the last years and also what we've discussed tonight and maybe also the pitches that you have heard, what would have been your first ideas or the biggest needs that you see that have to change in Europe for helping companies like DaWanda succeed?
I mean, our dream was really to be a pan-European company, just because also the kind of topics we dealt with, which was really like cultural products. And let's say handmade products represent a culture so much. So our dream was really to have that diversity that Europe offers represented on the platform. On the other hand, everybody mentioned that Europe is a really very fragmented market, not only in terms of language, but also, or even more, in terms of legislation, rules and laws. And we just found that actually just going into any European market was like not only super expensive, but also requested or needed so much time and effort and concentration and dedication of the team that apart from France and probably the UK at the time, we hardly saw any European market at the end of the day at that time really being worth the effort of investing into it, that much energy and money. And I think that fragmentation is probably the biggest problem Europe has to face and is continuing to face. And I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure that the European Parliament is doing its best, but I'm not sure that they're really fast enough. So I will probably propose something like, which is a mix of the ideas mentioned before, which is actually having national partnerships, like for example between France and Germany, where legislations can work together on overcoming the most urgent topics entrepreneurs on both sides have to face.
Okay, thank you very much, Claudia. So I would like to introduce my last guest, Eric. La Bonnardière, so you're co-founder and president of Evaneos. We already had your charming colleague, Caroline, pitching one of the ideas. So just to present you quickly and also Evaneos. So after a couple of years of experience in strategy consulting, you decided to combine your passion for globe-trotting with your entrepreneurial spirit. You left your consulting position to co-create Evaneos with your co-founder Ivan Vibu in 2009, so like Leetchi, with the goal to revolutionize the travel sector through technology. So Evaneos, for those who don't know, allows travelers to create tailor-made tours directly with local travel agent based in the destination. Evaneos acts as a trusted third party that sources the best local agencies in each destination and makes them available via your website, evaneos.com. You provide tools and guarantees to ensure that the Evaneos experience runs smoothly and securely for the traveler. After creating Evaneos on the French market with 3 local agents only, in 2009 you quickly developed Evaneos in Europe, and you opened the Spanish website in 2011, Italy 2012, English and Germany in 2015, and the Swedish version in 2016, and now Netherlands, Denmark and Switzerland in 2017. The Evaneos community counts 800,000 members and 300,000 travelers since 2009, and you partner with 1,300 local partner agents in over 160 destinations, and all of this with around 180 employees today. So thank you again for being here. So as I just explained, and I hope that not everything has already been said, you've expanded Evaneos super quickly in Europe. And as far as I know, most of the employees are based here out of Paris. So what was the key to this success in your eyes? And on the contrary, what were the biggest challenges you have faced in your business?
Hi, thank you for inviting me tonight. So yeah, you're speaking about success, but I don't think it's a success yet, because probably the key to success is to consider it's not a success. And probably because we had quite early very global ambitions and long-term goals. When you don't reach the goals, I mean, you are not satisfied. So we are working hard for that. I think that the key, I mean, to develop the company quickly was from the beginning to have, I think, a disruptive idea. So being able to develop a disruptive idea was, I think, the key. And when you have a disruptive idea, we are kind of the pioneers with this concept at the beginning. It's much easier because you don't face strong competition, or at least you are very differentiated from your competition. So it's quite easy at the beginning to generate sales and booking in our case. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was probably the timing, and we were quite lucky with the timing, I think. When we started Evaneos, we thought that we were on a niche and we would do a small business, actually. And we saw in the recent years a trend towards much more customization in travel, much more local experiences, and we were quite lucky. Of course, lucky doesn't happen by itself, so you have to work for that, but timing, time to market was very important. I mean, 5 years ago we decided to become international because we had a marketplace model, and this marketplace model really helps to scale the business internationally. So we decided to become global. And the idea we had at the beginning was to really put the team in the same office in Paris. And that was, I mean, a difficulty at the beginning, 5 years ago, to create global international teams to attract talents from abroad in Paris, because Paris was not seen as a place to do business easily. It's more and more the case, but still it's hard to attract talents from everywhere. There are some cities in the world which are much more famous for, I mean, doing business and creating a startup. So that was, I mean, a key challenge at the beginning when we decided to internationalize the business. There is a big challenge when you decide to do this kind of things, is to create an international culture in the company. So you have to change the language of the company. So we decided to put everything in English. So now we have to speak English. And what is great today is that there are some people who don't speak French on our office. So we give them French lessons. And in the contrary, lots of French people didn't speak English. So there are lots of language lessons in Paris. So all of this is quite expensive. It takes time. But I think this is the key to make your business more European. And when you have to compete against US startups, for example, it's clearly a disadvantage.
Okay, and I mean, also working out of the biggest challenges that you have faced, what would be for you, and maybe also considering the projects that we have heard tonight and that have been pitched early on, what would be for you the key projects that we have to tackle, the key points that would help companies like Evaneos, people coming after you, to grow quicker or with less hurdles on the European market?
I think I really like the idea of the Eurotech Pass because it's something easy to implement. Because, as it has been said before, I really believe that laws are strong constraints to scale your startup in Europe, but it's very difficult to change laws. I mean, there are some European directives in lots of sectors adapted by each market, but it's really a mess to understand everything and to change it. So I don't believe that we could change the laws quickly to really help startups to scale. So maybe we could take the benefit of Europe Tech Pass to create exceptions. Probably we could, I mean, if you match certain criteria, you could access to a certain administration in some markets and maybe to benefit from a status of exception. Maybe that could be an idea because, as it has been said before, it's I mean, it's like creating a new startup every time you decide to launch a new market. So it's really difficult. When in the US, the big startups, I mean, they access, of course, to money, but they have a huge market. There are 50 states in the US, but with different laws. But when you do business, it's quite easy. I mean, they are quite pragmatic, and they really facilitate the way you do business. That's why they grow fast. They have money, and they're able to acquire other companies, and they acquire European companies. So I know very few, I mean, big startups, scale-ups, in Europe that can acquire European companies. In my case, in travel, if I had to start the company now, probably 80% of the companies that could acquire my company are from the US. And I would like being acquired by a European company. So I hope we can create a kind of status that really make it easy for European companies to grow faster, because it's the only way to create those big successes.
Thank you very much, all of you. I have to look at the timing. Didier, I know. Do we have time for some questions or not really? Sisi, a little bit. So are there any, maybe one, maybe two. Are there any questions for one of our speakers in the room? Anything? Caroline.
Could you, all entrepreneurs, imagine to start now a new company in one of the other European countries first? So, for example, Eric to start in Germany, or Alix to start in Spain? Or why not?
I joined the company, I joined Leetchi 2 years ago, and I think partly what has made the success of Leetchi is Céline Lazorte's work, the founder's work, evangelizing, getting this new product known on the French market. And that is very dependent on the networks she had and the fact that she is today an emblematic French entrepreneur, French woman entrepreneur. And I think it would be very hard having this same momentum and identification on another market than the one that we know.
In my case, I think it would be difficult for me to create a startup outside of, I mean, Paris, where my network and my ecosystem is, and network is really key to make a success. But probably we could use the Eurotech Pass to create more bridges between countries. I'm sure that I could help German scale-ups to develop in France, when German scale-ups could help me to go faster in Germany. So it could be a lot of having a global network in Europe, and I really like the idea of the Eurotech Pass because it will embody a kind of global network that do not exist today.
Thank you. Is there another? No?
Je ne suis pas entrepreneur, enfin je suis entrepreneur, mais en histoire. Pardon, oh, okay. Oder ich kann auch auf Deutsch reden. Je travaille comme chercheur en histoire. In English, sorry. I'm writing the history of your story. I'm doing research on the history of European champions in the digital industry. And this story started in the 1960s. So everything you're discussing here, I'm finding the same themes, the same problems, the same issues in the archives, in the interviews I'm doing with very old people now. It's the same story again and again with new themes, new technologies and so on. But Yeah, the question is, where is the political will? We have the market, we have the industry. Where is the political will? That's an introduction to Munia's.
Okay, it's probably the last word for Munir, and we'll have the answer and the conclusion. Thank you so much, because you are the real heroes in our society. I do that because I think it. And thank you so much for creating activity, value, and employment in Europe in the future. Thank you very much.